the jury regarding defendants Barney and defendants Lampley. There are 3 defendants involved in this case. Mr. Robinson was lost his life in January of 2019. That case was never presented to the grand jury. The history of the case is as follows. The case was presented to the JPD partially investigated the case, and then the mayor of Jackson asked the Hinds County District Attorney's Office to investigate the case, and that was under the predecessor, Robert Schuler Smith. At that time, Mr. Smith asked the FBI to investigate the case, in which they interviewed some witnesses involved in the case. When we came in office in 2020, we made a commitment and promises to the citizens of Hinds County to get all cases off the backlog, which we did. We investigated this case and realized there were things that were not reviewed in the case. At the time the case was originally investigated, the autopsy report was not completed. The autopsy report indicated that Mr. Robinson died of blunt force trauma to the head. In addition, other medical records were not reviewed that also indicated that Mr. Robinson died of blunt force trauma to the head. And the IME report, the independent medical examiner report that was provided to our office, indicated that the cause of death was homicide. As such, it is our responsibility. In the year of 2020, we presented this case to the Hinds County Grand Jury, and a true bill was issued. A true bill meaning that all 3 of the officers involved were indicted, and that case proceeded forward. Today was the end of that case involving 2 of the defendants. There is a remaining case that I'm not able to speak about because that defendant still has an active case. In the trial, which was conducted by, which are behind me, ADA Demetrius Hodges, ADA Kurt Guthrie, and ADA David Lindsay, significant evidence was presented. 12 witnesses testified. 3 eyewitnesses identified that officers did body slam Mr. Robinson. Medical professionals, including AMR, and specialists and doctors, one who was deemed the expert by the court, acknowledged that Mr. Robinson did die of blunt force trauma. It was our hope that the case would go forward to the jury, and the jury then would render the verdict. Unfortunately, the judge decided today that the case would not go forward to a verdict, and that she issued a directed verdict for the defendants. We intend to move forward with the remaining case, which is before Judge Wooten. And at this time, I'm happy to take any questions, and I also want to give an opportunity for Mr. Robinson's sisters who are with us today to speak to the media if they choose to. His mother certainly was in court at least one of the days, but her health does not allow her to be here every day. But we still are very much committed to justice for George. A death did occur. This administration has a difficult job. This case was never about any police. This case was about individual actions, and we do what we are obligated to do, which is present those that are ruled homicides to the grand jury, and if those cases are indicted, we will move forward. And I'm glad and very proud of this administration for not hiding behind our responsibilities in doing that, and we will continue to move forward, not just on this matter, but all other matters that happen in our great county. So at this time, are there any questions?
D.A. Owens, are you surprised at the judge's decision?
I'm certainly surprised. I think we have an obligation before moving forward with cases like this to ensure the evidence is sufficient. Grand jury thought it was sufficient. We thought that the evidence on the record was sufficient. For those of you who watched the trial, there's tons of evidence in this case. The reports by the officers themselves put them on the scene. We thought that was sufficient. 3 eyewitnesses identified what they saw who were actually on the scene. They were the only individuals who had no interested aspect of this case. So we certainly are surprised and disappointed, but we do understand the not great system of judicial economy. A judge does have this authority to do so, and that was Judge Peterson's ruling. We respect that and move forward with the next case.
The defense says that they believe that you had your witnesses were inconsistent, the medical evidence didn't hold up to your claim that he died of assault by these officers, the alleged assault by the officers.
Well, it's important to note that the judge's ruling today did not deal with the medical aspect of the case. That was not discussed, as I understand the record. The record was just discussed what they identified at the time. And as we acknowledge the evidence in this case, we know that this action happened as a result of looking for a murder of Pastor Longino, which I would note, all of the defendants in that case, 2 of them have been sentenced for that original murder, and 1 is still pending. So we are making progress on that case. But at the time, the individuals had their faces covered. They were in SWAT paramilitary gear. And I think it was different to identify those. But in trial, a defendant's name was mentioned consistently. That was not a defendant that was on trial today. So I think that it's clear that police were present. Their own actions and reports that were read into the record by Deputy Chief Hearn put them there. So there's not a discrepancy of whether police removed Mr. Robinson from the car and whether he was body slammed on the ground. That was consistent by all three eyewitnesses.
Are you acknowledging, though, that your witnesses did pinpoint Lampley and Barney as the people who assaulted Mr. Robinson? It sounds like you're acknowledging that your witnesses didn't pinpoint them as the aggressor.
What's important to note is that, as I mentioned earlier, people's faces were covered. When we presented this case, and one of the reasons that we felt comfortable moving forward with this case is that there are different ways that you identify people, not just by eyewitnesses. Their own statements, we believe, place them as the individuals who actually removed Mr. Robinson from the car and then detained him. I think Judge Peterson's record also noted that certainly defendant Barney at some point in time was there placing his body some type of restriction to Mr. Robinson. So I think they did that themselves. I think the best evidence in a case like this is when we have admissions. In addition, we think that there's significant evidence that was not allowed to come into the trial. We think that that evidence probably should have come into the trial, and we hope that the public is able to hear about that in the near future.
What's that evidence? I'm sorry.
Let me get one more person since you guys two in the row.
What's that evidence?
Let me get one more person. I'll come back to you in a second.
In those use of force reports, the judge mentioned that it did give some insight into those two officers assisting in holding Mr. Robinson down. Did they provide any other clarity in terms of any other actions? Because I would think for a use of force report to be filled out, there would need to be some substantial physical interaction.
Yeah, I think what's important to note is that the FBI also testified in this trial. I also interviewed the individuals. A use of report was not only filled out, but AMR was called. I mean, we look at the beginning and the end of the life of George Robinson in this incident, we know that a traumatic brain injury did occur. So when we think about force and how the injury occurred, we had numerous medical professionals, AMR acknowledged on the scene that he had to be held up while they were doing the examination. AMR acknowledged when they found his body, he looked as if he had, this is a separate AMR, a significant traumatic injury. And then, of course, there were subsequent medical examiners that identified that he had the subdural hemorrhaging of the brain. I mean, that's clear that causes death. I think that has not been contradicted. Certainly, our case was presented, it hadn't been contradicted at that point. First.
You said there was some significant evidence that wasn't presented in the trial. What was that?
Well, evidence that the judge ruled that couldn't be admitted. I don't want to go into the weeds of that because we will still use that moving forward. But there was significant evidence that we thought that was relevant to acknowledging the role that the officers played.
Now, may I ask, obviously in this case we've got officers that are working within their capacity as police officers. And right now there's a huge national discussion about what use of force should involve, what is qualified immunity, that kind of thing. In this case, given that guns were used or whatever like that, what is it that put it over the top for you when you believe that they went outside their jurisdiction as police officers?
Well, for us, we always go on the evidence that's in front of us. Independent, I think we have 3 reports that indicated here a homicide occurred. That's pretty significant. That is how we as officers of the court and also officers of the state make a determination if independent rulings have been made. We subsequently conducted our own investigations. We didn't do this haphazardly. We certainly met with all the medical providers, and all of them consistent that this individual died by an amount of force that was significant enough to cause a brain bleed, and the evidence tracks that. Whenever we have that, we move forward. What's important to note is that the Jackson Police Department has asked us on all police cases, particularly homicides, to present those to the grand jury, which we do so regularly. This is not the first, second, or third case that we presented, even within assault or use of force. We present those cases because it's important to clear the officers. Again, our office work hand in hand with the Jackson Police Department on a regular basis and the Clinton Police Department. This case was never about a department or police as a whole. It was about individual actions that led to individuals' death.
Can you speak to the reason for those cases being split up? You mentioned this before, I apologize, but we had obviously these two under Judge Peterson. I believe Anthony Fox's trial under Judge Wheaton will be in September. The reasoning for breaking those up as it stands.
A course in practice in our county has been to indict individuals separately by virtue of kind of a long-standing policy of the courts. All these cases were indicted separately. The 2 that were in the court today were combined by Judge Peterson. They were not combined by our office. And again, the original other defendant is a separate case. We will certainly reevaluate that moving forward. There are some cases where we have indicted individuals together. In this instance, we did so differently, but we'll look forward to making sure we can do what's in the best interest of justice.
The trial upcoming in September, Mr. Robinson, can you talk to specifically how that officer played a role? in this case?
Well, I'm prohibited from speaking about a trial before it starts. What I will tell you is that there's significant evidence that came out in this trial that pointed to another defendant who was on the scene, another individual. And we think that if that individual was in the trial today, the outcome might be different. It might be moving forward. But that would just be speculation, which we're not allowed to do. But we're looking forward to making sure we continue, as we do with all victims, trying all cases or resolving all cases. At this point, I want to take a break and see if the family would like to say anything about your brother or not. Would you like to say anything? Yes. Please.
Hello. How everybody doing? I just want to say that the man up above, he is in control of everything. If the gentleman that was on trial today did not do anything, then they got what was supposed to happen. But, in other words, all I can say is the man up above always looking at you. So if you did anything that you shouldn't have did, then right now is the time to think. The next time if I'm in this position, what would I do? But we know that JPD, the officers that work for them, not the whole everybody, just the 3 that was on trial, we know my brother lost his life with them because first of all, to say they drove up, they pulled him out the car, he did not have a bandage on his head, he did not have no bruising on his head, he was fine. He just had a stroke, but he was going to get better. He might have been moving slow to get out the car. They over-excessively pulled him out. But I'm just going to say, that's what they got to deal with, 4 years. But they know they did murder my brother. My brother wasn't nothing. I don't care what they were saying for his blood thinners, this, that, or whatever. They actually killed my brother. I can't say Lampkin did it. I can't say Bernie did it. I can't say the other officer did it. But I can say out of all of them, they know they murdered my brother. My brother was murdered. So, I mean, whatever they can take out of that, he was murdered. So they would have to live with it.
Ms. Wade, are you concerned that no one will ever be held accountable for killing your brother, for your brother's death?
I would be upset. I would be really upset if nobody never nobody never serve, do no time. But, in other words, you never know how your punishment gonna come back to you. So that's something that I have to let my Lord up above handle that. I'm not gonna hate nobody, but I'm just gonna say, in this world, you be careful of what you do. Because you never knows. We never knows. And I'm not gonna hate them. But I hate it happen to my brother. I would have rather to see him sitting in a jail cell and I could go see him. But right now, I can't even go see him because he lost his life. And he lost his life on my birthday. So every time my birthday come up, what do I have to think about? They left me with? They left me with a brother that's in the ground. And I can't even see him. And I have to live with this for every birthday of mine. So they left me some. They think they happy and feeling good, but they left me with a body. They left me with my brother in the ground.
As with any case, there are no winners when we deal with this type of work. There are no winners. We see it too often in our county and too often in our city. We hope that we can have less instances like this moving forward and have more accountability for all parties. Thank you for your time. Take care.
And you've been listening to a news conference from Hinds County District Attorney Jody Owens. The last person you heard speaking was Betterstein Wade. That is the sister of George Robinson, the victim in this case. His death was ruled a homicide, and she was talking about knowing that her brother was killed that day and saying if it wasn't the men who were on trial, it was someone, and those men know who killed her brother. Now, this all is coming to fruition today after this morning's decision from Hinds County Circuit Judge Faye Peterson. She issued what's called a directed verdict, which means a ruling entered by a judge after determining that there's no legally sufficient evidentiary basis for a jury to reach a conclusion. This is what she said in court this morning as the defense was preparing to bring their case for Desmond Barney and Lincoln Lampley.
Based on the testimony and evidence presented by these witnesses, the state has not made a prima facie showing that defendants committed any of the offenses charged in the indictment. As such, this court finds that the motion for directed verdict on behalf of the defendant Barney and cause number 20-541 is granted and the charges dismissed with prejudice. The motion for directed verdict on behalf of the defendant Lampley is hereby granted and cause number 20-627. If I hear any further noise, that person will be removed from my courtroom and the charges dismissed with prejudice. Court is hereby adjourned. The bailiffs will secure the courtroom and the second floor.
And we know we're throwing a lot of legal terms at you today. We explain what directed verdict is. Let's explain with prejudice. With prejudice means it is dismissed permanently. Those officers, Desmond Barney and Lincoln Lampley, were free to go. They left their courtroom today, free men. Those charges, again, dismissed. They were charged with second-degree murder in the death of George Robinson. What you're looking at right now is video from that scene back in January 2019 when he was pulled from his car, slammed on the ground, and repeatedly his head was hit against the ground. They were looking for a suspect in the death of a minister that morning, and they were searching the neighborhood, and Robinson was one of the people that officers that day searched and talked to. Now, again, in this case, there were 3 officers who were indicted. That third officer, who has not been tried just yet, is Anthony Fox, and you heard the DA mention him earlier. His trial is coming up in September. You also heard DA Owens say that there were things that came out of this trial that pointed to someone else at the scene, but he said he could not elaborate on that case because there is still a defendant who needs to be tried, and he was referring to Anthony Fox. Again, his case is coming up for trial in September. Of course, we will have much more on this case coming up today on 16 WAPT News at 5 and 6. You heard